I think one of the biggest viral hits was in February 2012, right? The curry sauce meme. How did that happen?
Yeah, that was the first and one of the first, and it was viral from the get-go. And I was like, wow, that's crazy, like really crazy. And so, there was no business plan. We were just using this platform or medium as a way to de-stress or to have fun. It was what we did in class because we were kind of bored, right, in school. So school was a break for us because we had businesses outside of school. So school was like the time for us to take a break. So we took a break by making memes.
When you're using that as part of your entrepreneurship modules as well?
Yeah, so we didn't want to like do work because we realized in business school when you take courses in entrepreneurship, it's always the same thing, like business plan and then like present your business plan and forecast. So we were like, hey, we heard like these courses are kind of the same. What if we did one business plan and we took like 4 modules and we just represented the same thing? And we're like, oh my God, that would be a great hack. And we also like didn't want to spend too much time listening to other people's ideas and trying to figure out hypothetical ideas. So our strategy was simple. We wanted to make money outside of school. We had SGAG as a page that was by that time 20,000 people following. We just built this business plan with SGAG one time, and our strategy in bidding for classes was to group with exchange students because nobody in their right mind wants to be with exchange students. But we were like, you know what? We want people with no opinions who don't show up for meetings so that we don't have to actually have a shot at building something that they wanted to build. And exchange students just wanted to go to Bali over the weekends. So we were like, this is perfect. So we grouped with these exchange students and we told them like, guys, on week 1 the project is done. You don't need to do anything. You just show up for the final presentation in this t-shirt that we'll give you, and you just say the things that we'll ask you to say, and you'll get an A or you'll pass for sure. And they were like, guys, are you sure? They're like, yep, that's it. We got it all sorted out. Enjoy Bali. And so that's like what we did, right? And it worked. Like it was probably a sort of broken part of the system. We repeated the same strategy across a couple of modules, and surprisingly we did well because nobody else had a business plan. Like I was like monetizing a Facebook page that was actually already built. It was not just a hypothetical set of slides. And so that's how we hacked it. We saved so much time and we made so many good friends with exchange students down the road that you are my best Singaporean group mates.
How were you monetizing a Facebook page all the way back then?
We were not. There was no money, but with business school, it was just hypothetical stuff. So we just came up with these hypothetical plans of selling t-shirts because Adrian was in t-shirts, right? So we just came up with all these hypothetical forecasts, like we're going to sell these t-shirts. And we just printed a couple of them with vulgarities on it so that it will look controversial when we go up in front of the class to present. And that's it. We just gave these hypothetical numbers, and I think we did like some pilots, and then we showed actual sales, like real-time dashboards using Shopify. And the professors were like, oh my God, this is brilliant. And we did it, right? The joke was that it was meant to like just get through school, but it became serious.
And I wonder, you were talking about how there was no particular plan, you were just doing it. And yet you managed to make so many things that were huge hits at the time. There was like the population white paper, there was the bad haze. When I asked people what kind of questions might you have for the founder of SGAG, they said, how do these guys even come up with the memes in the first place? Because it really resonates with people.
If you go back to, I guess, the relationship or the culture that I have with Adrian, right? Like we went to A levels together, junior college, and we were in an environment where we were in an arts class, right? So we did arts, and there were 5 boys and 17 girls in our class. 17 girls versus 5 boys. And we were childish. We were childish kids, right? So we were at this very awkward stage of growing up where we figured like we're not like the cool jocks of the school. We're not like from the cool sports CCAs and all that. We were just regular guys. And we had also maybe reached a level of puberty where we were quite comfortable in our own skin. So the 5 of us would just like sit in the library or sit in an empty room by ourselves and literally crack lame jokes together. Like we would entertain ourselves for the 2 years. Like we would spend so much time just giggling at each other's jokes and trying to out joke each other. And that was really the DNA of the 5 of us. And this carried on into university when people thought we were crazy because we were just talking nonsense all the time. Like that was a big part of who we were as a group. So like naturally our brains when we are together is like wired to talk nonsense. We were talking nonsense all the time since we were 17. So naturally when we were in uni, and Adrian was brilliant at this, his brain is just wired with nonsense. Like he would just come up with all this, like I remember the haze came, right? And he was like, oh my God, we should take a vacuum cleaner, go to the window and try to vacuum the haze. And can you take a photo of me doing it so that I can make it into a meme? And I'm like, who thinks of stuff like that, right? So I'm like, okay, that's what we're going to do. So he literally holds his mom's vacuum cleaner at the window and he's like, I'm going to vacuum the haze. And the meme goes viral. And I'm like, wow, like nobody thinks like you, right? Like nobody has the time in Singapore to think like you. So that's really how we were as friends. And I suppose it carried on into the culture that we have today.
And one of the big ones was the Ah Lian meme, which was picked up by mainstream media. What was the background to that?
There was a big fight on the MRT train. It was a typical scene, right? Auntie nagging away at this young girl, and this young girl who looks like an alien, she's just trying to like keep it all in, keep it together, and she's like, run, run, which means like persevere, persevere, like don't say anything. And then like she snaps the auntie, right? Because the auntie's just like in her face nagging, and she explodes and bam, 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 and then she like this little girl just explodes at her, and it was caught on video, and we were like, whoa, that's like in our heads it was like Goku, right? It was like superheroes who were like supercharging their power, and then like we made all these references, and the audience loved it, right? And we were probably one of the first pages or first people to pick on viral content, turn it with popular culture references like anime, and put it into image format that was widely shared across the internet. So the mainstream media started picking some of these pieces up, and that was really early days. Like the joke was, once it comes out on the newspaper, we know the meme, that was a status symbol. So we started like piecing together all these new newspaper clips of our early memes, and it was like something we would be proud to show like our parents and stuff like that. So yeah, that was really how it went down in the early days.
And did you manage to build on that momentum if you were once mainstream media took hold of it?
Yeah, I think people started to notice the brand, the Facebook page. People started to follow, and this was early days of social media where there was not many people. There was nobody doing stuff like that, like nobody, right? So we were like the only ones, and it stood out. The traction was there, and people were following us like crazy. The kind of traction we were getting was just insane, right? And yeah, definitely riding the momentum, trying to outgrow, and the whole startup mindset of metrics, of follower acquisition, audience acquisition, just started kicking into my brain. I was like, okay, we need to hit this percentage of growth every week, every month. We need to track it week on week. And that was really how it started.
It's ups and downs, right? So how were you putting in those sort of milestones? Say, I want to increase by this amount, and this is how we'll do it.
We started looking at like follower acquisition. Like this was pre-algorithm on Facebook, right? So we started looking at like followers would get more reach. So we need to get more followers. So we would just need to put out content that works. So content mattered a lot. Quality, speed, quantity were all factors of success for follower acquisition. Then we started, the first thing I did when I went full-time was to build a website. And I started to track web traffic. I started to track like interactions and engagements on specific functions on our website or on our Facebook page. And I studied a lot into the whole like product side of things, where the correlation of engagements that might lead to some sort of a wider metric of fan love. And I started developing all these tools and things that we wanted to look at as a way to track our growth. And everything was just up, like traffic was up, engagement, it was just exploding at an exponential rate. And that was actually one of the main reasons why I decided to do it full time. Because in my first startup, everything was down. Like there was no money, bank account down, like everything was down, right? This one, like everything was up, and we didn't spend a single cent. Like we had no money in the bank, we had no fundraising, everything was like going through the roof. And I was like, wow, as a startup person, like these are metrics that people would only dream about. And this was one of the big reasons of why I decided to go full time.
And I think you found out that you had around 1.2 million followers at the time, right? Because Facebook had just launched their analytics.
Yeah, it was the reach metric, right? Like I was like, what is reach? Because reach was not a thing that Facebook had previously. And then suddenly they launched this like how many unique people you reach in the past week as a metric, which is still relevant today. And I was like, what? Like all this stuff reached 1 million Singaporeans this week, and we spent $0 on marketing. And the first thing I did was really to Google what's the distribution of the Straits Times, right? Our national newspaper. And they were at like 1.2 million. And I was like, wow, we're on par. If not, we're gonna be higher than them. Obviously it's different because they have a full set of newspaper. We had like one meme, and then maybe like we had like 50 memes in the week, but still like 1.2 million people looking at it, and all young people. It had to mean something. It had to mean that there was potential in driving a business around this sort of traction. Like that was the exciting part for me.
And so you started it with Adrian. Was it difficult for you guys to decide what kind of roles that you would adopt?
Not at all. In fact, when I was like winding up or in the thick of my first startup, he already threw me this idea like, hey, why don't come and work on this full time? And I was like, no, man, I just raised a round of investments with people. I can't tell my investors like I'm done, right? Like I just took money. My credibility as an entrepreneur would go down the drain in Singapore. So I told him like, okay, like why don't we hang out every month and I'll talk you through business issues. Like I think his challenge was the business side of things. Like he was very, very creative, probably the best in terms of funny content, but in terms of business, like there were challenges, right, that he was facing that he couldn't work through. And for me, like my mind was just all business. I was so sucked into this world of startups and business, and I realized a lot of the business issues that he was facing, I could, in theory, maybe help him walk it through, right? I was a bit of a geek at that, and so we found value in conversations. So we met every month at a bar, and he would like just list his business issues, and I would kind of like walk him through how I would think about these things. And he was like, you know what, why don't you join me? Why don't you join me? And so when I failed in September 2014, I told him like I'm done. He was like, okay, then that's time. Like this is time for you to come over, right? And I was like, yeah, I know, but like I want to see what's out there. There was the whole what if kind of thing. I guess everybody in their 20s goes through that, right? So I was like, what if I went to work for Google, right? What if I went to work for a well-funded startup instead, right? So I actually got some job offers from some companies out there, and it was worth exploring, at least in my head. And at the end of the day, I realized like I was so much of an entrepreneur that I couldn't imagine myself working for anybody or pursuing anyone's dream, keeping in mind that I had already worked for money before as a salesperson. I knew very clearly that I wanted full autonomy in my next gig. I wanted full control over business decisions or over what I wanted to build. Like the exciting thing was not the money. The exciting thing was the intellectual and maybe physical and emotional challenge of building something from scratch. Like I realized I really enjoyed turning ideas into reality. And so even if I got a job at a well-funded startup, I would probably be head of sales. Like that was probably the position I could go for, but I would never be a founder. I would never be a co-founder, right? It was hard to negotiate my way in. So I was like, you know what? I want to take a founder role because I love the autonomy. And so I told Adrian, like, even though I never imagined myself working in a meme page or working for a meme page, I love the idea that it's a blank canvas right now with traction that we can basically spin any way we want.
You took that idea of building that meme into reality. I can't imagine reality was easy in the early days, especially.
No, it was really hard. I mean, it was hard, but it was very clear this was it. Like it was very clear like this was so much fun and so purposeful for us. I think we never asked for easy. I don't think we went in expecting easy. And I think that was the mindset. Like we went in not wanting easy. In fact, we wanted to do really hard things, right? I think having failed a startup, that was probably the hardest thing already. And my co-founder Adrian was a naval diver who has gone through like hell week at training, and like whatever happens in building a company, both of us knew at the back of our heads it would never be as hard as what we had already gone through in life or just what had just happened to us, right? We were in a much better position. So because of this mindset, we had nothing to lose. Everything was just opportunity, land grabbing. And so we had a lot of fun actually. It wasn't as hard as failing in a startup. I think that was probably way harder. I think it was hard times. There were difficult moments, challenges for sure. When I look back on the journey, it's a lot of meaning. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of just kind of maybe surreal in many ways or so that we were able to just find a lot of these ideas that are now realities, right?
What were some of the land grabbing tactics that you used that proved to be very helpful? I imagine that the tactics must have evolved when you were doing it just for fun and now as a business as well.
Well, I think the first thing was like we asked ourselves like, firstly, who's doing this in Southeast Asia, and like what's the dream, right? For meme page, like just as a meme page, like that's all we wanted to do, and we were like, there's nobody doing anything like that in Malaysia, at least from our extensive research of googling Malaysian meme pages every other week, and we were like, there's nobody doing memes in Malaysia properly, and like all these like fans from Malaysia, audience members were writing to us, so we were like, you know what, we can never wait for the right moment to do something like that. Like if we wanted to go regional from day one, we can't wait for the right time. And we were like 5, 6 people, 7 people when I was like, you know what? We got to open in Malaysia with no money. So I literally got on a plane I flew to KL. I didn't know anybody in Malaysia. I had not gone to Malaysia by myself. I stayed in a one-star hotel at Brick Lane, and I just started inviting people for coffee and just talking to people, trying to learn about the Malaysian culture, trying to learn about the ecosystem. And I had an ex-co-founder there who helped, right? So I hung out with him, got to meet friends, and just started networking, and eventually found our first hire. And we had little money, but we could pay from Singapore. So I was like, you know what? The exchange rate helps. I can give you a job right now. And that's what happened. Like, we gave her a job. We just found a way to incorporate a company, and we gave her a job, flew her to Singapore, housed her in a nice apartment here. And we were like, just learn how we're doing things here and just go back and just build the same thing. That was the brief. And that was really how we approached it from day one. Like, we can't wait for the right moment. Just kind of go out there and just try. With hiring, like, we had little money. We had no investments in this company. So we realized, like, yeah, Adrian could only use Photoshop. He didn't know how to use video cameras. He didn't know how to use mics. And people asked us for videos. We didn't know anything. So we were like, you know what? We need to hire some smart, ambitious, young talents from the media world or communications world. So we went to universities and we just asked to meet these top groups or top graduates. And we pitched a bunch of them, like, why don't you come join us, right? Again, with the mindset, like, we just need to grab smart people. That was the concept we had from like Google or Facebook, like, bring the smartest people in and then they'll figure it out. So we were like, with no money, how do we do that? So we just went out there and we just pitched our pitch, shot our shot, and we managed to get like 2 to 3 really smart, ambitious young graduates. They joined us, and at the very beginning we had nothing, but it worked. They're still with us today. That was the mindset.
How were you thinking in terms of distinguishing yourself from those who were out there? You were inspired by, say, 9GAG, for instance, and there was others like Stomp. So how did that define who you were and your mission statement of bettering the lives of people?
Yeah, we met the NIGAC team a couple of times. They flew in to see us. We saw that, like, yeah, there was a lot of funny content globally that was quite generic, but there was nothing like home. There was nothing like laughing at your own backyard, right? In a language that only you get, in a cultural reference that only you get, in stuff that only matters to your community or your countrymen. And we realized, like, that was so fun for us. And so that was the value proposition that we started with. And then we were like, but there's Stomp. So how do you like deal with Stomp? And Stomp, for those of you who don't know, is owned by Singapore Press Holdings, a multi-billion-dollar state-owned conglomerate that featured viral clips of road rage and funny stuff that was happening in Singapore. And ironically, Stomp had become the place where anything controversial or anything trashy ends up on. It was trashy, right? There was a lot of trash on it. And we were like, did we really go to university to make a controversial, trashy page? And to be fair, SGAG was very trashy at the start. And we were like, no, we need to like differentiate, right? We need to have a mission statement. Again, the whole startup thing, like, what are you here for? Why are you doing this, right? And I remember this very clearly because, like, we had to define it. And we were stuck in this position where we were all over the place. The content was aggressive, it was rude, it was vulgar, and it was all over the place. And I remember, like, I was so uncomfortable with it. I called Adrian out on a public holiday. I think it was Deepavali. We sat in a coffee shop and I was like, we're not leaving until we have a mission statement out. And this was already like us operating for a couple of months. And we really sat there and we came out with a mission statement that said, we want to better the lives of all Singaporeans. It was a bold statement, right? And the mission is supposed to be bold. So our bold statement was better the lives of all Singaporeans. And so when you use that kind of a very broad, very altruistic mission statement, it helped us to really become a guiding principle of what we wanted to become, right? So for example, in the early days, again, like, road rage was the thing. It always is the thing. Like, everybody wants to watch a road rage video, right? But did it serve the mission of bettering the lives of people? Did it necessarily do that? And the answer was like, no. Like, if two people are beating each other up on the highway, it was very juicy, it was very tabloidy, but it wasn't like gonna make people's life better. It wasn't gonna make them laugh or really have a great time. But there were some pieces that once we had this mission statement, we started actively removing content and not going down cyberbullying path. We started like being very conscious about what we position people to be like, and how we used images of other people. And it was a learning journey. We're still not there. We'll never be there. But I think it was the guiding principle and the North Star of what formed the brand of SGAG, which was yeah, we want to make people laugh, but not at the expense of others. We try not to do that. We try to make original content that would really make you crack up, right? And that was difficult to pivot because it involved heavy lifting versus other pages that were just shitting on other issues, shitting on people, getting 10 times more engagements. But we had to like hold true to our mission and say like, look, we're not trying to build a fly-by-night single person operated controversial page. We used to be like that, but we're trying to move it into a family-friendly, brand-safe, all Singaporeans can come in and really sort of build something in that direction, which was not easy, but that was how we decided on that direction.
So you never hesitated once you had that mission statement, because people are naturally drawn to the worst things in the world. Those tend to go viral. Positive news is sweet, but not really.
No, we never hesitated. I guess in that sense, I felt a deep sense of purpose and I had to answer this bigger question in my life. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I spending in my late 20s a good prime number of years? Is it really to build a tabloid, trashy, controversial site? Or am I trying to build something that would matter for all Singaporeans, right? And that grand vision was purposeful. I felt it was meaningful enough for me to invest time in my life to pursue. And similarly, the hires that we brought on, they shared that belief, they shared that vision, they bought into it, and it was big enough for all of us to spend years of our lives pursuing it. So never looked back, never felt, oh, what if I didn't have this mission? Then we could milk the crap out of these controversies. We didn't have to do the right thing. I think one of the key things we learned is really not about the content that we make. It was also more so the content that we didn't make, right? Like the issues and the topics that you chose not to talk about. That was hardest. Like, oh, we could milk that, right? Oh, we know it will go viral. Oh, we have so many crazy ideas. We would call it dank memes. We had so many dank memes, right? Like, oh, it's gonna work. It was not just by commission, it was by omission. And that was something that we never told anybody. It was like, okay, we choose not to talk about it, but we felt it was the right thing to do.
So you have this mission, but it's very hard to have a mission if you don't have the cash. And you already said early on Facebook, no cash. You also didn't want to raise funds in your first year. So how did you start to find that profit? Wasn't there also you were selling vulgar t-shirts back then as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah, so the first thing was we sold vulgar t-shirts, which did really well. I mean, it was beyond our imagination. Within like 48 hours, I remember we sold 5,000 t-shirts or something like that. It was crazy. The brand love was crazy. So I was like, wow, that's great revenue. Like, I think the t-shirt run funded our salaries for the first year. Like one t-shirt run, we funded both our salaries. I mean, we were not drawing much to begin with, but I was like, wow. But we sat down again and we're like, do we want to be a t-shirt company? A vulgar t-shirt. Like there was Threadless and I love Threadless. We love Threadless, but did we want to be a t-shirt company? And the answer was no. So like, okay, then what do we do? And then we stumbled upon making some viral content for Scoot, and they would pay us for making viral content because they wanted to get social followers because they were a new airline. So they paid us to make funny content about them, and they paid us to laugh at them, put it simply. And I was like, wow, would there be more brands that would do this? Because I remember we did this experiment for them. Like we were able to, through a single post, drive like 60,000 clicks onto their website in 2 hours. It was basically like on steroids because like we would put like Google ads out for a week and they would get like 200 clicks. They would do a meme and get 60,000 clicks in 2 hours. The marketers were like, what? Right? So I was like, I think we can enter the space of advertising. What if we sold this meme as a service to advertisers? I had no connections in the industry, but I'm a salesman, right? So I literally got on LinkedIn and I just cold emailed and messaged everybody with some marketing title. I didn't care you were CMO or you were executive, or I just messaged everybody. And I was like, hey, I'm the co-founder of SGAG. I can help you drive a ton of traffic to your website. And I think your brand is going to be cool to have on our page. Let's talk. And obviously, like 9 out of 10 rejected me, but it just took like that one other person to say yes. And I figured if I have enough emails going out and enough people who would meet me and get a few people on board, the work that we did would validate itself. And then that would cause more people to come on board. That was the hypothesis I had. And it became true. Like the hypothesis held true. We did some early work for some really fun brands, and that allowed more brands to go like, wow, I want some of that. I want in on some of that. And that's how we got our first few gigs, which allowed us to make our first few hires because we needed people that had multimedia skill sets to help us build out some of the content.
Let's go back a bit because you passed by Scoot so fast, but that was a big deal. How did they even get you in the first place?
We just kind of like said, hey, like there's this weird new yellow airline from Singapore Airlines that was launching flights to South Korea, when the North was about to bomb the South, right? They were at the brink of war, and then there's this new budget airline from SQ that was trying to send people to South Korea when the missiles were already firing, right? And we're like, what's up with you? So we made a meme about them to laugh at them. And then like they replied in the comments, and the audience went crazy. They did a very cheeky reply. And it was the first time a brand actually replied us, because most brands would just shy away. Like, oh my God, this is a PR nightmare for us. But they came back at us with witty replies, and we were like, whoa, these guys are crazy. And then the following week, they launched a flight to China at the height of the bird flu. And like, what's up with you, man? Like, what kind of airline are you sending Singaporeans to extinction? And they were like, oh, don't worry. Well, you know what? We'll give 10 free tickets to your audiences, to your fans, right? If you're brave enough to take this flight. And obviously free stuff, right? Which Singaporean wouldn't like. So everybody like rushed in, and it created a social media storm because there were free tickets, right? And it was the first time anybody has done this. And then the CMO calls us up and she's like, yo, that was crazy engagements because of you guys. Like our social media metrics exploded. She's like, okay, come in. Let's talk. Who are you? So we met them, and they were like, this is super fun. They were super adventurous. They were like, here's a budget for like the next 3 months. Just make whatever you want and let's see what happens, right? So that's how it all started with Scoop.
So you started, and as you said, you hired these people 6 months after with what you were generating. You mentioned before that at the same time, you were trying to change the engine of a plane while the plane was in midair.
Yeah, I mean, like, this was probably later on. It was the same thing, right? Like, we had all this amazing content, we got more brands on board. And then, like, before we knew it, the team was like 15 going to 30 the next month. And suddenly there were people, right? And suddenly we were like bosses and like CEOs, and people came up to us and they were like, what's my career progression here? I remember getting that question. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I never thought about it. I just wanted to hire people to cope with the amount of work that we were getting. And then suddenly we were getting questions about career progression. And I was like, wow, this is getting serious. People's lives are at stake, and I need to give them an educated response. I can't just smoke my way through, because they were spending golden years of post-graduation with us. We failed in so many ways as early bosses or early employers. We didn't know anything. Like, why do we need to have a leave system? Just go lah. Like, I don't care. Just do whatever you want. Like, just do good work and take as many day offs as you want, right? That was really like how I thought about things. And we had unlimited leave policy. I didn't care. Just show up at work. And people started burning out because they didn't know what to do. Like, they didn't know whether they could take leave and whether they were entitled to. So I figured something was wrong. I couldn't operate like that. At this pace, we were going to be growing like crazy in the region if my dreams came true. And I couldn't just like anyhow, right? Like, I couldn't like just tell these employees whatever you want to do it, right? So it worked for the first 5, but the next 50 is not going to work. So I hired a management coach, and I told her, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you please coach me, right? And she did an amazing job for Adrian and myself. She was this stoic middle-aged lady, 25 years of corporate experience as people leader, and she coached us from body language to how we write to what we say to how we dress to everything. And she gave us these principles and guidelines of what it meant to be a leader that basically allowed us to form our identity as leaders. Before that, we were just no different from uni students, right? We were just 2 blokes trying to do what we thought was fun. But now we're getting serious, and she built all these frameworks with us and for us. And that was the part where we were changing the engine in the middle of the flight. The plane was moving, we were getting revenues, we were growing really fast, but like we needed to change our systems internally because it was a paper plane that was trying to fly like a commercial airline, and we needed help. So that was probably 2016, 17, 18. Those 3 years were tough because we had to educate ourselves. We had to learn on the fly. We had to become proper leaders and CEO and proper managers, which we had no corporate experience. If you think back, like, I've never worked in a company before. I've never had a boss. I've never applied for leave. I've never gotten a paycheck before from a boss. So like, how do I do all these things? So that was probably one of the toughest things we had to do.
And one of the things that I heard about as I was researching into your own employees as well is they always say that they are always asked to be constantly uncomfortable, which seems counterintuitive to what a company would want, but you've made it a core part of who you are.
Yeah, I think we review our journey, right? And there were moments where we were cruising, there was good business, there was good content. It's easy, like we could take a back seat, maybe take a holiday, but we looked at, again, some of the best entrepreneurs and some of the best organizations out there. Like Apple, like why would Apple suddenly jump from computers to launching an iPod and then jump from an iPod to launching a phone? Like they were not in the phone business. Why were they making all these random things that had nothing to do with who Apple began as, like a manufacturer of computers, of personal computers? And that intrigued me, right? Like this was pre-Facebook, pre-everything. And that concept of just like, wow, like they never settled, right? They never stopped innovating. And then you see Google switch it on from search engine to trying like building glasses to trying to build social media and then like doing all these things and then buying YouTube and like, wow, like they're not happy. They're never happy. They're never satisfied with just becoming the best search engine. They want to do everything else, right? And we were like, we need that same mindset. Because if we were just selling memes and being the best at memes, what does that even count for? It made no difference in the global scheme, in the grand scheme of life. Being a meme sales team means nothing. So we were like, we need to keep pushing. We need to keep failing. You're not measured by how many successes you had, but how many times we failed. And it was difficult because I had gone through failure before in a catastrophic way. And I knew that failure sucked. But at the same time, I was also at a point in time where I recognized that if I didn't fail in that first startup, I would have never learned these amazing lessons that I had sort of accumulated.